Hi, welcome to the Silver Empire Author Services podcast. I'm Russell Newquist.
And I'm Morgan Newquist.
We are the founders and publishers at Silver Empire, and we're here to talk about how you can make money selling your books. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Kindle Unlimited versus not Kindle Unlimited. And with us are Karl Gallagher, Schantz, and David J. West. We're going to pass the baton around and let each of them introduce themselves in turn. Karl, why don't you go first?
Hi, I am a one-time rocket scientist, still engineer of various types. And so I have applied that to writing some hard science fiction novels, the Torchip trilogy, which were finalists for the Prometheus Award for Best Libertarian Science Fiction Novel. I've also done some fantasy novels, The Lost War and its sequel, and some shorts. And sometime, with luck, in the next month, we'll have out the start of a new space opera series, Storm Between the Stars.
Excellent. Sounds very cool. Hans, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a scientist, an inventor, an entrepreneur. My first book was The Art and Science of Ultra-Wideband Antennas. And after struggling through all of the footnotes and equations and figures, I thought I'd try my hand at fiction instead. So I wrote The Hidden Truth, my first science fiction novel, and now sequels, Book 2, A Rambling Wreck, and Book 3, The Brave and the Bold.
All right. David?
I'm David J. West. I write dark fantasies and weird westerns because I got to get the voices out of my head. It's kind of my thing. I like writing a little bit of everything along the genre borderline.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk about Kindle Unlimited versus not Kindle Unlimited. And for the authors in the audience who don't know what Kindle Unlimited is, basically Amazon offers a service. If you publish through them, they offer a service to their readers called Kindle Unlimited. And if you sign up for Kindle Unlimited as a reader, you pay $10 a month. And any books that are enrolled in the Kindle Unlimited program, you can download and read. It works very similarly to the old disc-based Netflix system. You can get up to 10 books on your Kindle at a time. You have to check one back in before you can check out another. As a reader, you're effectively getting them for free. You pay your $10 a month, and you can get as many as you want, or as many as you can actually read in that time. And for an author, you can choose to enroll in this program or not enroll in this program. And if you enroll, you get paid per page read that somebody reads on your Kindle, or excuse me, on their Kindle. And you get paid a whopping fee of, I have the exact number here, and we'll make sure we get this to the decimal point. As of April 2020, it is 0.00422626652 cents per page. It is a little bit less than half a cent per page that you get paid. The other thing with Kindle Unlimited is that if you enroll in the Kindle Unlimited program, your ebook has to be exclusive to Amazon and cannot be available on other retailers. So this is kind of the way that the program works. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is the pros and the cons of joining this program and committing to being exclusive with Amazon, and what you need to think about as an author before you decide to go one way or the other. So I'm going to pass the baton around and let everybody start by sharing what is your experience with Kindle Unlimited, and what have you found with that, and or your experience with trying to go wide. Karl, I'm going to let you go first again. You just happen to be first on the list on my screen.
Okay. I have had all of my books in Kindle Unlimited the whole time. I have thought about going wide and run some numbers, but generally Kindle Unlimited has brought in enough reward for me to make me want to stick with them. I have actually had months where I had more revenue from Kindle Unlimited than from straight sales or other sources. And, you know, that's been working pretty well for me. It's kind of, I have a choice. I can go for the bargain seekers at Amazon, kind of like some store putting out coupons to bring in the bargain hunters, or I can try and go to the people shopping at all the other places. And so the question for me is, which one of those audiences is larger? And from what I've read and what I've said, at least in my subgenre, it looks like I'm better off going with the bargain hunters than trying to branch out to other stores.
Okay.
I will supply some numbers on that later on in the discussion.
We'll get into more details after we've given everybody a chance to do an overview. Hans, why don't you give us an overview of your experience?
Well, I also have been in Kindle Unlimited for the entire time I've had my fiction books, at least. My nonfiction is not in Kindle Unlimited because it's traditionally published and I don't have control over it anyway. In my experience, I get paid a bit less for a Kindle Unlimited read-through of my books. They have a fairly generous formula, at least the Kindle equivalent number of pages that they calculate for my books is actually a bit greater than the actual physical number of pages in my books. When they multiply that, less than half a cent per page through a book for someone to read it. So, although I don't make as much money off of a Kindle Unlimited read through as I would from an outright sale, I figured as a new author trying to break in, reducing the barrier for a reader to pick up one of my books and take a chance on it made it worthwhile for me, and I continue to hold that opinion.
All right. David?
Yeah, I was traditionally published first, and it took me a couple of years before I dipped my toe into going indie. And I got to say, for a couple of years, I didn't really pay attention enough to think page reads. So I kind of ignored it for a year or two until I realized, oh, some people are getting paid for that? Maybe I better sign up and see what I think. Because I didn't have my books anywhere but Amazon anyway. So I was just leaving money on the table and didn't know it.
Right.
So eventually I signed up, and on my best months, I think I've made almost 50% of my profit from KU.
All right.
On the best months. Probably at least a third.
Okay. Hans, I'm going to go back to you for a second with a question, because I think you touched on one of the things that is actually a major benefit of Kindle Unlimited. And you talked about the fact that it's a way for readers to discover an author at low risk to a reader. Why don't you elaborate a little bit on that for the authors who are watching so that they can understand what you mean when you say that?
Well, it's all the incremental cost to a reader to check out your book. If you aren't in KU, they have to fork over $3 or $4 or $5 up front to read your book. Now they could read the sample if they wanted, but it's a lot easier and a lot lower barrier to get a reader into your book to have it on KU, because they can borrow it. It doesn't cost them any more than the flat rate that they are already paying, and just makes it easier for them to pick up the book and read it.
Right, and that's something I'm going to just add one tip to, because we are doing a podcast towards authors who are trying to do sales. When you're trying to sell stuff, one thing you want to do is make it as easy as possible for your consumer to buy it. And in this case, you're not just making it easy and convenient with all the ways that Amazon has already done that with their ebook ecosystem. You're also making it effectively free, because they're already, in the consumer mind, it's free. They're paying their $10 a month, but it's free in their mind, because they've already paid that $10 a month, and now they're not paying for your book. So that's one benefit that you get.
It's really low risk.
It's really
For
low
the
risk
reader.
for a reader, and it is not necessarily, in my experience, but it can be easier to lure in new readers to take a chance on your book with that.
It is worth noting that you probably should be doing different kinds of advertising and different pricing structures to maximize KU reads versus sales if that's what you want.
Sorry, I had a spam call coming in on my phone real fast. Had to hang up on that. Let's see. So,
Well, Morgan, I'd be interested in your thoughts on how do you optimize your sales price points for KU, and in fact, what kind of price points would you recommend? Is it genre dependent? Does it depend on the length of your book? What do you think?
It depends on a lot of things. The big tactic, right, for making money on KU is to put as many pages in one download as you can. So that's why you see all the box sets, right? Like someone puts their entire book series in a single box set, and then you price it really high for Kindle, right? So most people are used to Kindle books being like $4 or $5. So then you take it and you price it like, okay, it's going to be $10 or whatever, where you're encouraging people to look at it in that I'm really going to get a deal by reading this. I only use up one of my 10 slots, right? But I get 6 books in one slot. And so you're really, really looking for the bargain hunters in that one. And you kind of use a mental trick that if they see that, well, I'm getting this $15 box set for free in KU, then they'll be likely to read it.
one of the things we've even seen, we've talked with a guy who puts box sets on Amazon and prices the box sets at $19, $20, which the other authors on the panel know that when you price a book at that point on Amazon, it lumps you into a different category and forces you to take a 35% royalty again. But he doesn't actually sell many direct sales copies of that box set. Instead, he uses that as a way to make readers think they're getting a huge bargain when they download it on KU for free, and he gets he makes
worth of page reads.
He makes on that particular box set, he makes all his money, like probably 80 or 90% of it off of KU because of that price structure.
And it's also a side comment that there seems to be two divergent markets on Kindle, where there are like people who only read box sets. So you can, in most cases, you can release a box set of your books you already have listed as a single book in a series, and you're not going to be taking readers away from your single books. So there are people who read box sets, and then you can put a box set up and get those benefits.
Right. So that's one of several strategies. One thing to realize with KU is that you typically are looking at a different kind of consumer than if you're marketing direct sales. And on Amazon, you're often reaching both customers, but it can be worth considering that when you tailor your marketing to think, okay, how am I going to reach this person? A KU reader is typically looking for a bargain. They usually read a lot. KU readers, they read a lot all the time. They're the whale readers, right? You're $10 a month. If you only read 2 or 3 books a year, your $10 a month for KU is wasted money, right? If you read 2 or 3 books a week or a book or 2 a day, like some readers do, then KU is a fantastic bargain. So those are really the kind of guys you're going for. So box sets, and then that market also does a lot better if you have a long series with lots of books that they can pick up and say, okay, great, I've got 10 books to read instead of just one. Okay, so I'm gonna ask the show of hands. We did the overview. How many people have actually sold your books? Why? Are we the only ones who have actually done it all? David, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience not on Amazon and then we'll share ours after that.
Okay. Part of my motivation was I have to touch on, there was a couple screwy things with KU that made me go, why is it doing that? And it made me mad at the time because I thought there was something fishy. And I said, that's it. I'm going to go wide. So I, uploaded some stuff to Kobo, to Smashwords, to Barnes and Noble. I honestly hadn't gotten around to Google or Apple yet. I was still testing the waters, and it looked like Kobo was really trying to prime the pump by telling me, well, we do these promotions, because I signed up to get my books in their monthly promos.
Mm-hmm.
I had high hopes for that, and I have a couple novellas that I've just left wide in Smashwords for wherever that goes, and it's like every now and again you got $2.50 from Smashwords. I'm like, that's $2.50. Nothing special. Like, oh yeah, I've got a novella over there. And with Kobo, I had high hopes because of their promos. And I told a few people that had asked me about, hey, when are you going to have books outside of Amazon? I only buy whatever. And I feel like those are about the only people that bought the books. I did the promos, and my sales were so lackluster that I said, hey, I'm mad at KU, but I know I'm making money there. I'm going to go back. So the bulk of my books are in KU. Not all, but the greater majority.
So I know best-selling author Nick Cole told me once in the very early days of our publishing career, he commented that KU drove more sales dollars for him than every other non-Amazon platform combined. And what I've found to be true since then is not just that was correct, but like you said, for the most part, especially in our early experiments, our royalties from other platforms, we were lucky to get that $2.50.
Yeah.
It was, I will occasionally get a royalty payment from somewhere for 37 cents, weird numbers like that. So our experience going wide, I'll give it briefly. When we first signed up and first started publishing things, our own stuff initially, we first enrolled in KU because we were really new to everything, and we're like, well, we're going to be on Amazon exclusively for right now anyway, so we might as well put it in there. And like many people who publish for the first time, the first few things we published sold basically nothing. So we experimented a lot. So in the early days, we experimented by pulling some books out of KU and saying, hey, well, let's try selling them somewhere else. And they still sold nothing. So we were like, okay, well, let's put them back in KU and try some other things. The first real success we had was with books in KU. And so for a long time, we stuck with that. And our numbers, for a long time, our numbers were similar to what you guys are reporting. We were getting between 40 and 60% of our sales, of our revenue every month was KU. A really sizable portion of it. So we stuck with that for a long time because it was working. And so one of the things that's happened to us in the last year is that despite putting out a lot more books, despite doing a lot of pushing with them, our KU revenue has either stayed flat or dropped off while our sales revenue has been rising. And so as of about 6 months ago, KU was down to being 20 to 30% of our revenue at best. And it's been dropping since then as a percentage of our revenue, with one notable exception, which was the month we had This Strange Engine as a free promo on BookBub. It did gangbusters in KU when it was listed as a free promo, and did really well. And we had an outlier month that month again, and KU did really well. But otherwise, That's been our experience. So we've been moving more and more in recent months towards going wide, simply because we're getting less revenue from KU, so we have less to lose. Which leads me back to Karl. I'm going to ask you a question about something you talked about at the beginning. You commented that your best month, you had about 70% of your revenue from KU. What's a typical month like, and what's your worst month like?
Oh, let's see. I have not been tracking the month-to-month patterns that well. I've got the raw data. I could actually pull it up, but what I generally look at, and I'm gonna show you just how much of a nerd I am, that I am going to inflict a graph on you here.
Excellent.
So let's see. Are you all seeing a pie chart now?
Yes.
Yep.
We are.
Okay. So this is totaling up the sum of my Amazon sales since Torchip came out in 2015. So this is all my books put together. And so you take a look here, I've got almost half of it as Amazon ebook sales, but I have nearly as big a chunk as KU reads. And really proportionally, the KU chunk should be slightly larger because I haven't weighted it for the fact that I came out with an omnibus of the whole Torchip trilogy together. And the KU people love that. They will just
Right.
grab this whole trilogy in one volume, blow through the whole thing in a day. I will see spikes on my graph and take a look, and it's like, wow, that's the exact page count of my numbers. So you can see, KU is a big chunk for me. And obviously, and this may be that I'm mostly hard science fiction, but you can see that the electronic books totally dominate the paper books and the audiobooks. I mean, I've actually had more audiobook sales than paper books. And that's not, and the paper isn't just Amazon, that includes going to a con and hand selling. So the KU is a huge chunk. I kind of have this trigger that I watch for when I check the monthly sales, because the way I look at it is, if Amazon's getting 80% of the ebook market, which is, that may have gone up. There was a Wired article this month or last month that claimed Amazon had over 90% of the ebook market. I don't know what they based that on. 80% I'm taking from the author earnings report that came out a couple years ago, which for readers, authors who are listening to this, you may want to check out authorearnings.com. You have to go to the Internet Archive now because the site has gone down, but there's a lot of stuff there.
Very unfortunate that they went down. That's a fantastic site.
Yeah.
And you will have to go to the Internet Archive at this point, because the records are no longer on that site, but it's extremely good. Yes.
So there's fascinating stuff. So I kind of look at it, if KU drops to less than 20% of my monthly revenue, that's the point where the 20% of the ebook market that is not on Amazon may outperform KU, and I should go learn how to upload to Kobo and to Barnes and Nobles and the rest of them and go put in that work. And it's just never gone down to that point. I've never had a month where it was that little. So, that's kind of my big data point. That's the break point I look for. You talked about having a lull in your KU stuff, and I've watched for that. Again, this may be genre dependent, because hard science fiction, is something where I think you get a fair number of whales who like ebooks. So
a couple things, really, really good stuff. Fantastic chart, by the way. That chart would be very representative of what our own numbers were like up until about a year ago. And we had everything in KU because we had a chart that was very comparable to that. The numbers weren't exactly that, but they were really close. I see the same behavior you see. I've heard people complain about KU readers, reading 10% of your book and then throwing it out. And, it's like, well, if I'd sold that book, I'd have made full price and blah, blah, blah. And KU is a little bit of a harsh marketplace, right? I mean, if they don't like your book, they're going to move on to the next one. But our experience has been a lot like what you said, where I'm typically seeing, if I look at the numbers and really do an analysis on page reads, I'm either seeing what you're seeing of people are reading a whole book in a day, and you can clearly see from the numbers because they're either exact multiples of the page count in the book or really close. If it's like 8 pages short of the whole page book, that's somebody who just didn't look at your back matter, right? And so typically it's really close to that. Or what I see is that if you take the counts over a few days or a week, that clearly somebody sat down and read the book fairly quickly. So I tend to see the same exact phenomenon you're talking about, where people are sitting down and reading it in short periods. It's hard to be 100% sure of that because of the way Amazon reports the data, but the data that I'm seeing supports that conclusion as well. Those are good numbers. And one last thing before I pass the torch on to somebody else. I'm not sure why we've seen our decline in KU numbers. I have talked with some other authors who have seen the same thing. And I've also talked with other authors who are still doing great in KU and have had no change. I don't know if there's something that's changed on Amazon's algorithms. I don't know if it's genre dependent. I don't know if we're doing something wrong now for the way the market has changed. I honestly don't know what's caused that change, but when it dropped to that point, it was worth us experimenting on other things.
Yeah. And I'm prepared to do that experiment because I will see dips and I will get a little nervous when suddenly, I go a whole week with, no activity or no significant activity. And, some of that is, I think, starting out, you look at, 7-10 years ago, there were all these stories of people who just wrote anything and said, and even 2015 when my first book came back, I was uploading it several times to try and get a formatting issue fixed. And so, upload, have my buddy check the Amazon preview, upload another attempt and so forth. And I made a sale during that. I hadn't told anybody because I was still trying to fix but there was someone so hungry out there that he grabbed this book that nobody had been told about. Well, that was then. And since then, every year there's been another 1 million books come out, new writers jumping in because they heard you can get rich. People like me who wanted to write a book but heard the publishing horror stories and then was willing to do, I can bypass all that stuff? Well, then sure, I'll write a book. And all the big pros whose blacklist was out of print, and it's like, these 30 out of print books I can put up on Amazon, and now all those books. So suddenly there's a lot more competition for the readers, and I think just about anything can kind of knock you out of sight of the readers just because you have these constant waves of new books coming in.
I think you're right on all of that. I think all of that's accurate. It does feel like it's getting harder every year to get through the noise and to cut out there. David, I'm going to ask you a question touching on something you talked about earlier too. You talked about Amazon being screwy and pissing you off for a little bit. You're not the only person that I've heard this story from. And in fact, you're not the only person I've heard this exact story of they screwed around, they pissed me off, I left KU and I went back because it's where the money is.
Yeah.
One of the issues with Kindle Unlimited that makes a lot of people nervous, even those of us who use Kindle Unlimited, is the fact that you're committing to putting your books exclusively on Amazon and you're helping to feed the Amazon monopoly as it grows. do you mind elaborating a little bit on what happened that irritated you, and yeah, just elaborate on it a little bit.
Yeah. One of the things I was trying to do in studying out how to market better was not having a name where I'm writing everything. So I tried the pen name just to focus on fantasy with that one and take everything I've learned to just clear the palette. So the pen name's fantasy only. And the book took off great. I did the sequel, and the sales were wonderful, but the page reads were just abysmal. And I'm like, what the heck happened? Because the other one had great sales and great page reads. Book 2, great sales, almost no page reads. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. Why? And it made me mad that the page reads were so bad that I said I should just go wide, because I'm getting the sales anyway. I might as well go wide. And so I did try going wide. No sales. Something was better than nothing. So I went back. But I do the AMS marketing. I haven't dipped my toe into much Facebook marketing. I just haven't got the handle of it yet. But I try to keep my finger on the pulse with AMS. And I did a big release last month. So I'm watching the numbers multiple times a day. First day, 3,500 page reads on the new book. Great. The very next, I thought 3,500 was an odd number. How do you get an even number? This next day, 1,000 page reads even. Third day, 1,000 page reads even. Fourth day, 1,000 page reads even. And I'm like, all right, let's even say Amazon says the book is 475 pages. I don't understand what are the odds, the synchronicity that I'm going to get 3 days in a row at exactly 1,000 pages. And then just after midnight, that third day changed. It bumped up to like 1,500. And I'm like, still, that's weird that I would even have 2 days at an even 1,000. And I've noticed lots of times, because I'm a night owl, I'll watch the numbers and it'll say my book stops, page reads at this. And then right after midnight, all of a sudden I got 200. I'm like, so there's something a little bit wonky with how they upload the page numbers. It's like, I'll look the next day and suddenly there'll be 500 more. And I'll be like, where'd that come from? So it's wonky. There's something weird, but it's still more money and more readers than I would have if I was out. Because I don't think, if you're doing well in KU, I think you should just stay, because that's money and readers that you wouldn't have going wide, at least yet.
So I can answer some of that wonkiness. This won't won't address all of it, but I can tell you some of it. And these are some of the things that personally irritate me. My background is as a software engineer, so I look at problems like I'm about to describe and say, what idiot built this system? So there are a couple of things, and the first one is one that actually isn't an idiot thing. It's just the way technology is. So the first thing is, if you tend to see spiky updates in the data, and what happens is the data is being calculated on somebody's individual Kindle that says how many pages are they reading, right? And
yeah.
But that data only goes to Amazon when that device is connected to the internet. And a lot of readers will read their book with the Wi-Fi turned off for various reasons. Maybe they're reading out somewhere where they don't have Wi-Fi, or in my own case, hey there. we have a podcast crasher. It's okay. Or in my own case, I tend to turn off the Wi-Fi because it saves battery on my Kindle. And so whenever that device connects back to the internet, it will send back all the data on how many page reads have been read since then. So you will tend to see spiky data that will come in at odd times and weird times, because that's when the person connected. What you will also see, Amazon has real wonkiness in their system. And this is the part where I say, what idiot designed this? And why haven't they fixed it over the course of the last 10 years? Because they spend enormous amounts of resources trying to fix the problems that this system creates. They don't actually track, did you go to page 1? Did you go to page 2? Did you go to page 3? If I go to the table of the contents and skip straight to chapter 10 in your book, which happens to be at page 235, to pick a random number, now you've gotten credit for me reading 235 pages, even though I just skipped straight to that on the table of contents. And that's the way their system works.
That's what is triggering all the book stuffing that happens.
So one of the scams that people do, and I will tell you as an author to other authors, don't do this, because if you do this, Amazon will figure out that you're doing it, and they will ban not just your book, but your entire account and shut you down.
They will end you.
They will end you. What some people have done as book scams is that they will put a system to where the actual book that you're paying for is in the last 10% of the book, and there's pages stuffed for 90% of the book that's gibberish. And then they have
actually, often they're stealing other people's
often
books.
They're actually stealing copyrighted work, and they're just straight out plagiarizing it. And they will have some sort of mechanism in there that is a click here to read the story or whatever to jump you to that point in the book, so that you're going to the beginning of the story, but you're actually giving them now 1,000 page reads or whatever before you've read a single word. And this is one of the scams that people do. And Amazon polices this, and they spend an inordinate amount of resources policing this when they might actually be a lot better off if they just fixed their retarded system. Sorry, I may not be allowed to say that these days. Politically incorrect of me. So you will see wonkiness in their data sometimes, and some things like that. We've published 50 some odd books now, and I've got rather a lot of data, and I watch it a lot, often daily myself. And I have seen some other weird things in the data that I can't always explain myself. Some of the things like you're describing. I see weird spikes. I see occasionally very suspiciously even numbers. Somebody reading and stopping at a random spot in your book, they don't stop on page 1000 on accident very often, right?
Yeah.
That's just not how things work. So I have seen some of that as well. I have seen suspiciously even numbers. I've heard stories from other people about a lot worse than what I've personally seen. And so I know that is there. Does anybody else have oddity issues with Amazon that they've had in the past, with reporting of KU in particular in this case?
I have not seen anything glitchier than my day job, so I may be a little inured to it.
Fair enough. Fair point.
I remembered one thing that made me try wide too. I had another book that was out and was not selling well. It's just one of those ones that just, no matter what you do, it doesn't work. And I actually got it on my wife's Kindle account and went through it to read the page reads so that at least I'd get credit on hers. And then I went back and looked at my stats. 1 page read. And I'm like, I went through the whole book and it said 1 page read. That was another thing that made me go super mad a couple of years ago and try to go wide. Because I'm like, if it's not giving me page reads for mine, how many other people am I not getting credit for?
Let's talk about Amazon's tracking reporting for a moment, because I could go on about their reporting at length, but I've already talked a lot. So I'm going to ask if anybody else would like to share their experience with Amazon's tracking of Kindle Unlimited and how much data it does and does not share with you. Anybody?
Hans.
Well,
Hans, haven't heard from you in a while. I was hoping you'd speak up.
well, the thing that frustrates me about the Kindle Unlimited is it you have no idea where people have stopped in your book or how many pages they've read per book or how many people have downloaded your book. I mean, it would be kind of nice to know, you know, those 1,000 page reads, was that because you know, 100 people downloaded your 10-page book and read it all the way through? Or did 1,000 people download it and read the first page and say, I've had enough of this, and get a different book? I mean, you really have trouble telling what those page reads mean in terms of, are people finishing your book or what?
If 1,000 people downloaded your 10-page book, you'd know that.
How would you know that, David? I agree with you. but why
From
don't
your
you
rank.
explain that for
Your
our watch-
rank.
Oh, the page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your,
So-
your book rank, because a KU borrow will rank you like a sale. So if you got 1,000 people downloading your book in one day, you're going to be shooting up to the top 100 in Kindle.
Right. You're going to have a very high sales rank for your book if that happens. Really excellent. But that's the only way you'll know. The reporting behind the scenes, and Hans really hit on exactly two of the big things that bug me personally, the two biggest. Number one is that Amazon gives you no indication whatsoever of how many people have actually downloaded your book. Unless you go and try to use one of the sites that lets you backtrack from your sales rank to your theoretical sales numbers. And that's really nothing more than an educated guess. So they don't tell you how many people have actually downloaded your book, and they give you no indication. I was talking with Karl earlier about having to do analysis of the page reads myself manually to try and guess how much of my book are people reading. And it looks like people, you know, generally are reading most of the book. But the thing is, Amazon knows that. They have that data. They could tell me that data. Are people on average reading 70% of my book or 2% of my book, or, you know, what have you? What's the answer? And they report none of it. All you get is, here's the total number of pages that were read on your book on this day. That can be a very frustrating number to work with. I know Hans talked about wanting to know, where did they stop reading the book? As a publisher, that'd be great. As an author, I'd really love to know, what page did they stop on? Sorry, I'm shaking my camera. What page did they stop on?
Yeah.
Because I could make my book better. If everybody's stopping on this page, then I screwed something up and I need to go fix it in my book. And I would like to know that, but Amazon won't tell you that at all.
Yeah.
Karl, you were saying something.
I have gotten that data a couple of times from bad reviews. And this is entirely my own fault. The first two books in the Torchip trilogy were pretty much PG-13. You know, there was references to stuff, but there was nothing on stage. For various plot reasons, the third book was, I would describe as rated R. And this did not go over with some people who had gone in expecting a PG experience. And so I've gotten a couple of reviews where they specifically, you know, one guy, you know, described, you know, it's like, if this was a paper book, I would have thrown it at the wall at one specific scene. And there was another one who actually listed the percentage they'd gone into the book. And, you know, and this is the percentage where I bailed out. And so, you know, I pull up my copy and I check where 41% was, and it's like, oh, so you got through the scene with the horse and then you gave up on the book. Okay. But, you know, clearly it warned me, and, you know, given the genre I'm in, I am being a bit more careful with my new series to make sure it's like, yeah, there are some romance readers who want their stuff spicy. I am learning that generally hard science fiction and space opera readers do not want their stuff spicy, and so I am complying. Um, but I only have that because of a couple of bad reviews where people specifically complained about that. And I don't know if this is 0.1% who's just so easily offended that they ranted about it on the internet, or if I actually have about 1/3 of my audience that was going through and bailed out at that point. And as you know, as Hans, as you guys have said, I would really like to know that. And Amazon has the data buried deep. Well, they may not save it. I know on my day job I wind up tracking some stuff in spreadsheets because the automated system does not save information. And Amazon may be a case where they note that, and then the data gets thrown away. So they could share it with me. They're not. I don't know if they have stuff like that. I know certainly, their in-house publishing imprints, I would certainly hope those people are twisting arms to get that data so that the tools are created that could eventually be shared with the rest of us. But yeah, I don't know if they keep the data, and I'd dearly love to have it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've just said right there. I have to say, as great as the experience typically is shopping on Amazon's website as a consumer on the front end, on the back end as an author, it feels like their website is the very best that late 1990s technology has to offer. And I do, in many ways, I feel like there's a lot of things they could do better on that side that would really help out. What is, let's go around the table here again, and I'm going to ask 2 questions. I'm going to start with the first one. What is the most positive thing that you have to say about Kindle Unlimited and your experience with it? Karl, go ahead.
I just say it's an easy way to get into a new market. I check one box on their interface, and they make my book available to a whole bunch of eager readers, who, I can't get at, but, they apparently are out there, and whoever they are, they're giving me money. So that makes me happy.
Hans, what about you?
Well, I think the exciting thing about Kindle in general is, yes, how easy it is for you to publish a book. You can literally have a text file, and ideally you want to have a halfway decent cover page for your book, or cover title graphic to help sell your book. But it's so much easier than publishing a traditional book where you have to worry about the formatting of your pages and the margins and things like that. So, I really do have to take my hat off to Amazon for how they've revolutionized publishing by making it so easy for authors to get their works out there and attract readers. A number of my favorite series actually are books that have very amateurish looking covers that I'm sure would never have gotten the attention of a traditional publisher, and yet they're just great stories. And by word of mouth and Amazon's algorithms trying to connect readers to those stories, the reader is out there, looking for them.
All right. Anything to add to that, David?
When it comes to the KU stuff, I'm doing better than you this month. I think I'm about 50% at least. So mine hasn't gone down yet. It's still doing good. So I appreciate that there's readers out there taking a chance, using their KU to still look at my books. And I've tried to do series to capture them. And as long as it keeps paying out, even though I get mad, I'm going to stick with it for the foreseeable future.
I'm going to go back the opposite direction this time. We'll start with David and let him go again. Is there anything that bothers you about being in KU? Do you see any long-term potential concerns or negatives? Do you worry about Amazon? Anything of that nature? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, with the KU, I wonder about the page reads. I don't trust it because I don't trust the page flip feature. If I knew how to format a book to get rid of page flip, I would try it. But for right now, as long as they're still paying their 70% and the ease of working with the system, I figure I'm going to stick with it until they do something that just goes beyond the pale. Just because I still have stuff in Smashwords, I would still put stuff in other markets if it paid out, and it's always going to be kind of, I want readers, but I want to get paid, so where's the money at for me today and tomorrow? If it really changes tomorrow, I would adapt.
All right. Hans, what about you? Any concerns, negative thoughts?
Well, of course, my biggest concern is that Amazon might choose to abuse its dominant market position by arbitrarily changing the royalty rates, either lowering the per page rate on KU, or taking the 70% royalty they offer on standard Kindle books to authors and repackaging it as something like they do in audiobooks, where they take just an insane portion of the sales price of audiobooks. They have the power to do that. They haven't so far, but if they do, that's going to be really disastrous for independent authors. So I look forward to supporting and participating in alternatives to Kindle and KU.
Right. Karl, any thoughts of your own?
Yeah, being entirely dependent on Amazon does not give me a warm fuzzy. I mean, I'm a customer of Amazon. They've done great things for me. I would not have written my books without what Amazon has enabled. I even love Jeff Bezos' rocket ship. He does some nice stuff, but I don't like being under the thumb of a single organization. And one of the things about KU is it's a 90-day sign up, and if they change that to a 1-year sign up, I would be very likely to bail out on it, just because right now, if they make a new policy change and things totally go to hell, which happened about 5 years ago. Kindle Unlimited paid by the title rather than the page. And so when I was writing my first book, I was watching that and honestly considering chopping it up into 4 books with separate covers in order to cater to that algorithm, like lots of people had optimized their writing for. And then they changed it to per page, and now the customers want huge omnibus things and so people are putting out 1,000-page books instead of 50-page books. I have to be ready to jump out of the way of the elephant if it decides to trample me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they if my memory serves, what it used to be is it was all or nothing. If they read 20% of your book, you got a payout per book, and if they didn't cross that 20% mark, you got nothing. Am I remembering right? It's been a few years.
I don't remember the exact percentage, but that was definitely the concept.
Right.
That sounds really familiar, and that was one reason I hesitated joining for a long time, was the 20% benchmark.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, but didn't they used to report the total number of downloads you actually had when they had that system as well? Or am I remembering wrong? It has been a few years, and so I don't trust my memory.
Before my
It sounds familiar, but I didn't sign up for it.
Okay. Yeah. So we worry about that too. Obviously, that's a big concern of ours. And with our revenue dropping, sorry.
Well, I should say I have real concerns with Kindle Unlimited in a big picture view for the long term, because I think as an author, the way that you stay successful and everything is by building a fan base. And I don't think Kindle Unlimited helps you build a fan base as much as everybody might have assumed at the beginning. I think there's a lot of, I'm going to download, especially with the big book collections. Okay, I'm going to download this and read it, and then it goes in my, little red folder on the Kindle, and I never think about it again. And the key to being safe from things like Amazon is having your own platform. And I think Kindle Unlimited takes away from that. Now, when you're really early on and you really need the revenue from it, I would probably do it. But I worry that you're not building a whole lot of fans out of it, and that you're handing over all the information that you need to market and keep bringing more people into Amazon and hoping that they will do it for you.
So one of the things that we've done recently, and I would recommend for those who are able to think about going down a similar path, we have started going wide in our books, but it's not because we're doing a lot of sales on non-Amazon platforms. In fact, the only real success we've had on other major booksellers was another book pub we had when our book Fade by Daniel Humphreys got a book pub, and it was wide, and we had great sales on Amazon. We had great sales on Kobo and Barnes & Noble, and Google and Apple did fairly well too. Great sales. With Amazon and its algorithms, what we had good sales, and then it kind of fell off, but there was a nice curve as it went down, and we had some follow-on sales. On the non-Amazon platforms, we had great sales and then a hard cliff right off the edge. What I have been told by people who have been very successful wide is that you basically have to be marketing your books all the time, constantly, to succeed wide. And that matches with our own experience. What we have done lately, because our KU revenue has been declining, is we've been putting the emphasis on our own website and sales through our website. And we're getting several benefits from that that are really fantastic. One of the biggest is that we're collecting data, as Morgan mentioned earlier. Instead of Amazon collecting all the sales data and knowing who's buying the books, we're collecting the data and knowing who's buying the books, and we're able to email that person back and say, hey, there's another book out. Would you like to buy that? We're able to use that data to help target ads on Facebook and Google with considerably more precision, because we know who's buying the books and can figure out who else is likely to buy them because of that. And we're now getting modest success on our own website. It's not a runaway success, but it's modest success. I can say that our average month on our website is more than our entire sales on all non-Amazon platforms, except for that 1 month we had a book bump. We now do 2 orders of magnitude better than we've done in our entire history on everything else. That's a difficult prospect, though. I'll say, for the authors watching, selling direct to the consumer rather than letting Amazon do it for you takes a lot more work. And in our case, it's been helpful that we have 50-something books up on our website now to offer, and go with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily tell anyone not to be in KU for it, but I think it has a lot of long-term ramifications for the market too. And that we're going to start seeing that over the next couple of years.
Related question. I'm going to start with David, because I think I might know his answer from things he's said already. Do you trust the numbers that Amazon is giving to you in its reporting of KU? What?
Not really.
Not really. Hans, do you trust their numbers?
I would be very interested in taking a closer look and figuring that out. We should set up an experiment.
What
And,
about you, Karl?
The data looks, the behavior that I see matches what I expect to see. I see surges when my book is mentioned on social media. I see, oops.
Uh-oh. We just lost Karl. I'll pick up with what he was saying and add my own opinion. It was a loaded question that was a little more loaded than I really meant it to be. My own experience is somewhere in between, I think, Hans's and Karl's, which is that I generally see what I think looks legit from them, and I think their numbers are generally-ish right, but I don't trust them 100%. And I've seen enough of the wonkiness that David describes that I think we've got. I don't trust it 100%. I think there's something going on.
There's been scandals like Facebook on the video, like where some of these platforms have really been caught just flat out lying about their numbers. So. Okay, well, we've gone about our time limit here. I'm going to ask for some last thoughts, and then we'll give everybody a chance to pimp out your books for a second before we go. Any last thoughts to share with us, Hans?
No, I find Kindle Unlimited a valuable program as an author. I appreciate this chance to learn a little more about the pros and cons and the ins and outs of how it works.
Any last thoughts, David, that you'd add for somebody watching?
I had been dragging my feet, and Morgan has talked me into trying box sets.
Good luck with them. Hope they go well.
That was my takeaway from this too. I need to try a box set. I got enough books to do that.
So the thing with the box set, right, is you don't really, if you're already in KU, you don't really lose anything with it. It's a completely different set of people, so you're not going to be losing sales that you would be getting on your single books. And then, so, if you hit the right algorithm and go, it's kind of like printing money for something you've already done.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I enjoyed being able to talk with you guys.
You're very welcome. Hans, tell us a little bit again about who you are and where we can find your books.
Well, like I said, my background is in science and engineering. I have a PhD in physics that I've applied to antenna engineering. If you're interested in ultra-wideband antennas, I have the book for you. If you're a science fiction reader, I have an alternate history techno-thriller series, The Hidden Truth, which is set in a parallel universe remarkably like our own, except the 9/11 hijackers attacked the Capitol and the White House, killing President Gore and making President Lieberman in charge. And that's page 1 of the first book. So it goes through an elaborate historical conspiracy to suppress the truth, and the hero has to find out what's going on and tackle the conspirators directly in the subsequent novels.
All right. David?
I guess you could find my books in KU.
Tell us which ones we should look for.
I just released a brand new book 1 in my series. I did it as an experiment to backtrack. They wouldn't let me make it a book 0, so I made it a book 1. And it's been doing pretty good for my action fantasy. And then I'm still working on weird westerns, some gas lamp type things. It's been a lot of fun just writing what I like to read and seeing if other people do too.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. Oh, and Karl.
Our last guest was Karl Gallagher, and he wrote the Torch Ship trilogy, which you can find on Kindle and KU.
All right.
Oh, and don't forget Lost War, his fantasy 2-book series.
I'm gonna have to look for that.
Oh, it's excellent. I would advise you, though, do not take it to scout camp and read it just before you have to get up early in the morning and walk through dark woods a half mile to the latrine.
Good deal.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and thanks everybody for watching. We hope you learned something valuable out of this today, and hope you tune in next time.
All right, thank you.